Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our webinar today on optimizing your carrier onboarding with Tailwind and RMIS. My name is Brad Zaitzoff, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Tailwind, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Now, before we really get started, I have a quick poll for our audience. Now, as more and more of us are working from home and watching these webinars, obviously from home, wanted to find out, what's the strangest thing you've done while attending a webinar or an online meeting? Is it eating breakfast? Did you wear your pajamas to it? Cooked lunch or dinner? Were you watching Netflix while it was happening? Or were you doing something else that we're not going to be sharing publicly here? I'll give people a couple seconds here, just a fun one to wake everyone up. All right, we got a good assortment here. Good assortment. Nobody's really going to do anything too secretive, it seems, right now. All right, let's get people here. A few more seconds. All right, we'll close that poll off and share the results. So a good mix, a lot of people were cooking. A lot of people were still in pajamas during the time, and I can attest that some folks at Tailwind have done that too, and had their cameras on. And of course, it's always interesting to hear what others have indeed done, but that is for a different discussion. So thanks everybody there. All right, now for a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all registrants in the next day or so. For the duration of the webinar, all attendees will be muted, but if you have any questions, you can send it through the question box, and we'll be reviewing these during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. Today's webinar will be led by RMIS Director of Sales, Bill Nordis, and Tailwind's Director of Product Design and Delivery, Kyle Shaw. Bill leads the operations and business development at RMIS and spearheads compliance services for brokers, shippers, and 3PLs. Kyle has been in the transportation industry for over 12 years, and most of that time with Tailwind. Here he works closely with customers and our dev team to deliver solutions that really match the requirements of today's freight businesses. For those new to Tailwind, we're a transportation software company focused on helping small to mid-sized trucking companies, freight brokerages, and those businesses that do both. Since launching our true web-based TMS offering in late 2016, we've made over 300 enhancements and updates to it, making it stronger to help folks like all of you be more effective and nimble, to make good decisions quickly, supported by data that's made available at your fingertips. Now, with that out of the way, we're going to run a quick poll to learn a little bit more about you. Basically, just want to find out what made you decide to come to today's webinar. Are you looking for ways to simply onboard carriers faster? Do you want to protect yourself from the risk associated with non-compliant carriers? Maybe you're looking for ways to speed up general business processes. All of the above, or are you here for some completely different reason? Maybe your boss said, hey, attend this webinar. Hopefully that's not the case, and you want to be here out of your own free will. But if your boss makes you do it, then we'll take it too. All right, it's like most people have voted. Maybe I'll share it with our organizers here and everyone. So looks like people are interested in all of these things, like onboarding carriers faster, protecting from non-compliant risk, business, or speeding up business. So that's good, and maybe some were forced by their bosses. So anyway, we're glad to have you. Thanks for that insight and what you're looking for. And with that, I'll be quiet for a little bit and turn it over to Bill to provide more information on RMIS.
All right. Just check, Brad. You can hear me? I hope everyone can hear me.
We can hear you.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for showing up today. My name is Bill Norris, as Brad said, with RMIS. Appreciate your time. I think I'm just going to start with a little bit about RMIS for those of you who may not know. We are a third-party compliance provider. We specialize specifically in one small piece of your business, but a very critical piece of your business. Your carrier sourcing, your carrier onboarding, and your carrier compliance. We've been in business since 1996. This is our 24th year in operations. Things have changed quite a bit since those early days. There was no such thing as a third-party compliance provider at that time. We kind of pioneered the space. Fast forward to today, RMIS is easily the largest provider in North America. We opened operations earlier this year in Europe, and we are expanding currently into Mexico as well. So a little bit of scale. We're currently lucky enough to have systems in place with 17 of the top 20 freight brokers in the US by revenue. We onboard a carrier on their behalf on the order of every 6 seconds. And what that does is give us some unique abilities to perform this role on behalf of our clients. And we're going to look at kind of what those abilities are, how they can help you, and give you a little look at, you know, how it may function. So if we could roll the slide there. All right. So onboarding is a lot of things to a lot of people, and it varies in definition wildly. We kind of see it as a 3-step approach. There's sourcing carriers, acquiring carriers. We have tools in place to help you with this part of your business as well. You know, a large part of our client base are new brokers, small brokers. I need to grow my capacity. I want to attract new clients. Can you help me there? And absolutely we can. We onboard a tremendous amount of carriers. Last month, I guess it was October, we reached a milestone internally that for the first time in our history, every time one of our clients asked us to onboard a carrier on their behalf, we already knew that carrier. That means that we've already had contact with that carrier through another client or more. We've obtained profile and contact information, pay-to information, operating area information, certainly, you know, DOT info, and then the big one is we've already secured an active and audited insurance certificate for that carrier. So this is a very valuable piece of what we can offer, and pretty much uniquely. If you can kind of imagine for Amanda that 99% metric, what that means is there's effectively no carriers in North America who have not gone through our system at least once. And indeed, our internal numbers suggest that indeed they have indeed gone through closer to 60 times each. So that gives us some capabilities that we can pass on to you. That means, you know, I'm looking for a specific carrier with certain capabilities and certain operating areas, maybe certain insurances in place before you ever waste your team's time with going down, you know, that hole where you've talked to a carrier and basically I can do everything, just call me and let's talk about it. So we've got tools that help you acquire carriers, source carriers, which is certainly in front of any onboarding. The next piece would be I've identified a carrier, I'd like to bring them into my network. You know, the actual onboard begins. What we do is we build systems. They're web-based tools is what they amount to for you to perform that task. You direct your carriers to the website. Once they arrive, they're going to go through a process that would be defined by you. We've got different service levels that, you know, have higher and higher functionality associated with them. But in general, what we're trying to do is replicate your process. And we're happy to share, you know, industry practices. Are we in line? Are we doing the right thing? You know, what are these other guys doing? What is the industry doing? We can share that information with you as well. But the concept is we provide you a tool that's highly customizable to fit your needs, direct your carriers there, and they're going to go through and systematically achieve those hurdles. And again, it's going to be defined by you. You know, universally, everyone's looking for contact info, pay-to info, sign my carrier agreement, I need some insurances, etc. So The tool allows you to do that day, night, doesn't matter. It standardizes the process. It speeds up the process. It alleviates, allows your team to do other maybe more important things. And we'll look at kind of an experience of what a typical setup looks like a little bit further in the presentation today. So if we go to the next slide, we've just talked about acquisition. We've talked about the actual onboarding. At that point, the carrier's finished. They're now in your network. We kind of switch our hats and our roles for that particular carrier, and we now become your compliance partner. We will have worked with you and your team. And I always like to say, RMIS, we don't dictate rules, we just enforce rules. We're going to listen to you and your team. Hey, this is what we think is important. We want carriers to, have this type of insurance and this amount and these certifications. And maybe we've got a few, other questionnaires that we'd like to introduce and get some more information. And maybe your carriers are domiciled in Canada and they're working cross-border, and you would like to see maybe some CT-PAT certification, etc. The good thing about RMIS is we've been doing this for so long with so many clients that you're going to be, we welcome those new ideas that we haven't already implemented. So if you've got a strange process, a strange request, we're certainly going to be able to accommodate that for you. With that would come varying insurance instructions, documentations, etc. So, that compliance piece, the first part, relatively easy. Find some carriers, go through a process, sign some documents, you're on your way. This one is really the beating heart. And I've put 3 bullets here. I talk about negligent hiring. This is the one that scares us all, right? Somehow, ironically, brokers can be held liable for an accident where you didn't own the freight, you didn't own the truck, and you certainly weren't driving any truck. But yet, a plaintiff's attorney is going to come into your shop and they're going to dissect your process and try to figure out a way to assign that fault to you. And our experience with this suggests that the most valuable component to help you alleviate this risk is to put solid carrier selection criteria in place and make them consistent. And that's what the whole concept behind an automated process is. It's defined, you've got clear policies in place, and they are repeated and repeated and repeated. Now there's exceptions and life gets in the way, we get it. But your best defense in that situation is going to be consistency with a defined process in place. The integration with a partner like Tailwind is really what closes that circle. We can do part of it for you. We can help you find them. We can onboard them, and we can check all the boxes for you. The integration back into your Tailwind system kind of locks it in. We communicate back and forth very frequently as to how your carriers are at any moment in time. What is their standing? Are they compliant or are they not? It's a pass-fail information send that will actually link to your users, to your employees' ability to dispatch that carrier or not. So you can see how it completely closes the circle. You've defined it, you've handed it off to a third party who enforces it, and then the result is linked back to your users and their ability to assign or not. They really can't bend the rules unless you intervene or one of your admins or authorized people get involved to create some type of an override. All right, let's keep moving here. Okay, now the follow-on to that is, that's great. We will do that. We will evaluate your carrier. But from the RMIS side, the way we approach this is it's a perpetual loop. We take your entire carrier network. You've taught us your rules. We go through, we check all the boxes, and we start over. And we do it again and again and again with the goal of informing you as soon as we can that one of your rules may have been broken. Conversely, we want to alert you as soon as we can that one of your carriers who was in a bad state came back into a good state. They're now available for use. But additionally, outside of that, working with a provider like RMIS, you now get to plug into our community effect. all of those other carriers, all of those other brokers who are using a carrier, stressing their compliance. Maybe there's some detection of fraud that's happened over here with another client. It didn't really find its way into your world yet, but it might, or maybe they're in your network. But by virtue of it happening anywhere in our network, we get to disseminate that information out to all of our clients. If there's a fraudulent ABC trucking in Glendale, California, and we are able to detect that, we're also able to pass that on to you without your real knowledge of it. We'll alert you to it, of course, but we proactively prevent that carrier from even showing up at your doorstep, etc. The automation of all this obviously creates labor savings. There's certainly price tags associated with every service, and a lot of times it's easy to look at carrier onboarding and compliance as just a paper push, and it's not real valuable. But there's a lot of value there if you kind of think it through to the end. There's certainly litigation is the big one at the end, but labor cost in the creation of the carrier file per se, chasing down an insurance certificate. Did it take too long to chase down a certificate and the freight came and went? Someone else got it, etc. So our systems are real good at creating those automations and those labor savings due to efficiencies. And again, we're going to talk about this and look at it as well here in a minute. And we'll talk about a little bit there. If we could flip on to the next slide, Dave, Brad. All right. So I keep harping on it. Enforce consistency. And that's the product of a system like ours. There's really no way to bend the rules unless you have a lot of eyes on it. You've got a provider that's consistently evaluating your rule sets on your behalf and alerting you to it. And then, of course, it updates continually into your TMS, creating all of those efficiencies and so forth. Let's roll. Okay, so we're going to look at it, which will kind of bring it all together here in a second. I'm going to show you a video, but we'll tie that together. But a provider like RMIS, we feel like we are uniquely positioned to provide that service to you. And I'm not sure which one of these I'm sharing. And I'm going to show you a short video here of kind of how we do it for those of you who may not know. Quick question, Brad, organizer. Are you seeing the correct screen? I've got a few screens going here.
Yeah, right now I see the opening to the video.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So I mentioned websites. Again, these can look a lot of ways. They're highly customizable. Some folks want them to be pretty, some want them to be just fully functional, etc. But we'll work with your team to sort that out. We're going to build you a tool. You simply would invite or direct your carriers to show up at ABC Carriers or haulwithyourcompany.com, etc. And we'll have waiting for them a tool that allows them to onboard. So generic looking one here, very functional. Welcome. Thank you for your interest in becoming a carrier with our brokerage. Here's what you're going to need when you get inside. It's not the prettiest, it's bullets, etc., but it's very functional. The goal is to get the carrier in, get them complete and out of there in one try as quickly as possible. I mentioned we do a lot of carrier onboards. It's in excess of 100,000 every month. I can tell you that there's certainly tails, like there is in any product, that would have to do with multiple and unique requirements of your carriers that could slow things down. But generally speaking, if you throw those tails out, this experience to your carrier is going to take right around 10 minutes, probably a little south of 10 minutes. Part of the speed is that we just simply let them know in advance here what they're going to need when they come on inside. Maybe they need to go get a copy of their insurance agent's email address, etc. But we're just going to let the carrier know and they come on inside. Now they identify themselves, interstate, US, intrastate, US, intraprovincial, Canada, etc. Any of these combinations will work, freight forwarder, MX, enterprise, but it's how we're going to uniquely identify that carrier and start singling them out for your compliance metrics. What's showing up here is an example of a carrier who did not meet your rules. They've been in the system about a minute, and already we found out and we know that, wait, this guy doesn't meet your authority rules, or his safety rating's not up to par, or like this example here, maybe they didn't have their authority for a long enough time. These are all rules that you would define. The carrier would get a simple, nice message, but basically letting them know that your registration's over. You must have active authority in this case to work for our company, etc. Concept is don't waste the carrier's time, don't waste your time and expense of having this guy finish. All right, the opposite of that, of course, would be someone who passes all your rule sets. We call this page a gate. It simply means check, 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 and there's a lot more checks that can come into play here. AM best ratings, geographic area blocks. We can block out insurance underwriters, insurance agents. You know, this other is a nice way to hide things like a do not use list that you may have. If you've had a bad experience with the carrier, you simply don't want them inside. So there's lots of optionality around what can occur to let a carrier in or not. This guy passes, he gets to pass through the gate and actually begin the onboarding process. And again, this is a very generic look today, but from here forward is very customizable. We're going to collect certain information that almost certainly all of you are interested in, contact information. We will have some corporate identity information, certainly for carriers that have DOT filings or provincial filings, etc., where we can hard enter their corporate addresses. Their pay-to info may be the same, it may not, etc. They may factor, as you see this little video getting ready to show. But one way or another, we're going to collect their pay-to information on your behalf. Other contact fields, you know, universally, who's a corporate contact, sales, dispatch, the list can go on and on. You want a second backup nighttime maintenance phone number, we'll put it in here for you and collect it on your behalf. You know, I like to point out right here a lot of times as well that clients will say to me often, why don't you fill all this in for them? You already know who they are. And I explain back to them, and it's another you know, benefit of working with a company like RMIS. They're right. We already do know this carrier. We already do know their dispatch and their sales and their contact info and all of this information. But here's a great fraud feature. If I'm pretending to be a carrier, what's this going to show up as? You know, ABC Trucking. This is called US Test. There's a very good chance that we already know who US Test is. And if a guy is a fraudulent actor, maybe he's trying to steal your freight, maybe he's trying to get a fuel advance, etc., there's a good chance they're going to come over here and maybe try to change some dispatch information on a cell phone and email. We will detect that. We will say, wait a second, this cell phone number is at odds with a known and verified number that we do know. Alarm. And it doesn't have to be bad info, but we will now contact the known carrier and say, hey, we've got a carrier setup going on currently. They're claiming to be you, and they're trying to change some info. Is that accurate? And you can imagine the result, but it's things like that that RMIS can kind of uniquely do that you're not going to find anywhere else. All right. Your carrier agreement or agreements, everybody has at least one. If you've got 20 or 30 or 50, that's quite okay. We can accommodate that as well. Maybe you've got a Canadian carrier, domiciled carrier agreement, cross-border agreement, US agreement. Maybe you work with other brokers and you've got a broker-broker agreement, on and on and on and on. We can accommodate as many as you need. We can build in the logic that will direct the vendor or the carrier or the broker down the correct path, which would include accompanying insurance instructions, etc. Whatever that path may be. They'll never know the difference. It'll be seamless for them as well. But it's a full online replication, HTML of your agreement. Purposefully, you know, the old way of doing things, back and forth, emails, you know, PDF, etc. All editable, all subject to fraud. That's one of the reasons we do it this way. You can't touch it, you can't change it. We do capture the corporate contact, someone who has legal authority to sign the agreement on their behalf. We date it, we timestamp it, we capture an IP address of the source of the signature, and they sign and on they go. I won't spend any time on it today, but we've got ways to kind of deal with red lines or revised contracts as well. Insurance, big piece. It went a little fast there, but if we don't know the carrier, we're going to ask them, who's your agent? How do we get in touch with your cargo provider, your auto liability provider, etc. If we already know, they skip. They never even see these pages. But that's our way of obtaining the insurance information from the source. To our knowledge, we are the only providers that do this. It's a big, heavy lift, but it's the appropriate way to zip up risk. You know, at some point today, or when you get a moment, go to your favorite search engine and search editable accord form and see how long it takes you to produce a convincing fake insurance document. We work with tens of thousands of insurance agents to secure the information directly from them. By policy, we do not accept it from a carrier. And another layer beyond that, we can do this in the US, not Canada just yet, but in the US, if similar to the carrier database, we have an agent and producer database. We've been doing this for a quarter of a century nearly. Why don't we know you, Mr. Insurance Agent? If you show up in our not recognized, not validated list of insurance agents, we indeed go looking for you. Simple things. We go to a website. Do you have a presence, a business website? Step one. Step two, we go to a state licensing insurance board to make sure that you're a real agent and you're licensed and you're in good standing, all in advance of receiving a cert from you. So lots and lots of procedures on our end to ensure that we are getting the appropriate information, insurance information from the correct source before it ever finds its way to you. All right, tax documents, W-9s, W-8s. If you need them in Canada, we can validate EINs and socials on the W-9 form right here for you if you'd like with the IRS. It's another good fraud feature. It also ensures your 1099 data is correct. Some profile information, you know, modes that apply, commodities you like to haul, what size of carrier are you, what's your equipment counts and types and trailers, highly customizable, again, to meet your needs. Certifications that may apply, you saw that at Skip By. We offer, of course, hazmat validation, California CARB, and many other validations to kind of line up with your needs. Where do you operate, Mr. Carrier? US states, regions, Canadian provinces, Mexican states. You see a kind of an intermodal ramps and ocean ports here that the carrier can select all that they may service. And of course, what we're doing with this information is now making it usable to you. This is what updates inside of our databases. When you source carriers, the first step, you'll be able to look at your carriers. Show me all my carriers that operate between New York and Louisiana, and it'll populate for you. Or go build a query. I'm looking for carriers that satisfy A, B, and C. This is the refresh. Every time a carrier onboards with us, we get new data. We get to update. They bought 2 new trucks. They opened a new lane. All of this becomes visible to you. Even though you onboarded that carrier once 2 years ago, you're always going to have the latest, greatest, freshest data about that carrier. Payment options, payment types. Again, your listings here. You see a 30-day standard, maybe payable in a couple ways, check or ACH, 2-day quick pays, etc. We also have integration into a number of the payment providers. TriumphPay as an example. We can plug into all of that for you as well and report that information to them. Banking information, if you need that for payments, we'll capture that for you too. Routing, ABAs, etc. We've got a number of ways to deliver this information to you. We might send a simple email to your accounts payable team. You may want it to be more secure. We can set up APIs. We can have you set up some FTP folders, etc. So there's lots of layers of security involved. At some point, the carrier's done. So this process, like I mentioned, about 10 minutes, and the carrier's going to be out of there. But it's fully defined by you. If you look way down here at the bottom, you see an 800 number. What that represents is that RMIS also operates a carrier support center. If a carrier has questions with any of this process, they're stuck on a question, they want to know why they're not certified, did my agent provide my certificate, all those kind of questions can come to RMIS. They're subject to the appropriate service level, but we do have that service if you need it to take all of that off of your hands as well. It's staffed on-site, full-time employees by RMIS, and it's English, Spanish supported as well. It's not an outsource. All right, so this carrier's done. They get some kind of a thank you message. What doesn't show up here, we often have requests to, hey, can we put a little message here to learn about our other, exciting carrier opportunities? Click here. We can redirect backwards now to your fuel program, or maybe you have a load board, etc. So that's all available as well. But the carrier's done. They're out of here. They're going to get an RMIS ID. That allows them to log in post-registration. A week from now, a year from now, they've got a menu in there. They can update, they can change. You can change. Maybe your legal drops a new agreement on you. We need everybody to repaper. You'll have a system in place that can already accommodate all of that. So that carrier experience is finished and they're on their way. We kind of have a back end to the system as well. And this is where information lives. The integration with Tailwinds, we push a lot of information their way. They grab it, they distribute it inside their software, and a lot of that transfers. But our portal will also always have all the information that you would ever need about all of your carriers. You can have as many users as you need if you've got agents, etc., or operations in multiple cities. You can, of course, access the website from anywhere that they may be. They have certain roles that you can assign to them. Some folks are view only. Some folks can create overrides on rule sets. That becomes very important with the integration. We have an activity dashboard. Today we set up 3 carriers. We've set up 4 in total. We've got 2 carriers inside of our system right now. Here's the last step that they've completed. Here's the last time that they've made forward progress to their next step. It allows your users visibility as to, is this carrier progressing? Maybe they're due on a loading dock in just a short period of time. Are they getting through? Do I need to call them? Do I need to find somebody else, etc. There's lots of reporting that's going to be associated with the system as well. We won't really probably look at that today, but due to the custom nature of what we build, there's going to be varying reports that line up with that, and we could talk through that individually if you'd like. There's ways to close the system up. I don't think you saw it in the beginning here. This system was what we would consider open. There was no barrier to entry. If your freight brokerage was called, 123 Freight, you could send your carriers to 123freightcarriers.com. They could get into the system that way. You verbally, pass the domain to them, or they could search for you and find you. But effectively, there's no barrier to entry. If they qualify to work, they would qualify and be part of your carrier network. This is a mechanism that lets you close it up by invitation only. It lets you fully control your traffic and other rule sets if needed. You'll have an override capability for all of your rule sets. Life operations gets in the way. Sometimes you must create overrides. You've got one carrier selection. We're going to go for it anyway. The system will allow you to do that. It will also log the user who created the override and what their notes or reasoning was. We've got tools that let you kind of search carriers in advance as well. Just throw in an MC or a DOT. It'll line them up against your basic qualifiers. It'll let you know what insurances they already have. It'll let you know if they're in your network. You can certainly look at some authorities and safety ratings and other information. All right. All of your carriers will have a storage or status page, we call it. And what it amounts to is an organization of all this information. The carrier, let me see if it shows some tabs here. Correct. Okay, so there's going to be a bunch of tabs that open up, and this is where we will uniquely store this signed agreement by this carrier, this tax document, their profile information, etc. So it's a way to organize, it's a way to store documents and throw away, get rid of those file cabinets that are over there. So that was a pretty quick overview. There's lots of functionality and customization outside of that, but to kind of wrap this whole presentation up from our side, it's again back to that 3-step process. We're going to try to help you source carriers, find carriers. We're going to put a system in place with your help that's going to allow you to efficiently onboard those carriers and replicate the process. And then we're going to be your compliance partner. We're going to keep checking all of your boxes continually and alert you as quickly as possible when a carrier is either in or out of compliance. All right, so I've said it a few times and I'm going to pass it back to Brad, but it's a really strong partnership with us and Tailwind. We're kind of both have, unique features and functionality that collectively, working together, all these tools and goals that we just talked about, we can provide those to you.
Thanks a lot, Bill. And we actually have another poll here now for folks. Just find out what tools people are currently using for their carrier onboarding. So is it a lot of manual labor, your own blood, sweat, and tears? Are you using another app or onboarding platform? Or is it somehow a blend of magic? You wave a wand and say, Abra, carrier, Dabra, and poof, it's done. My kids would really roll their eyes at that last joke I was trying to make there. So thanks, Dad. But oh, good. Somebody appreciated it at least. Thank you. And I'll give people a couple more seconds here, and we'll close that poll off and share the results. So it looks like a lot of manual labor is being spent at this, as well as some magic. So whoever's using magic, we'll have to talk to you afterwards to see what you're doing and see what kind of integration we can work on there too. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kyle, and we'll go over how to access the RMIS information from within Tailwind.
Perfect. Thanks, Brad, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So yeah, lots of information provided there by Bill, and with our RMIS integration, Tailwind users can take advantage of speeding up that carrier onboarding process. So you say, what does that mean to me? Well, now you can have updated vendor and contact records with data flowing from RMIS in a couple of clicks into Tailwind. So rather than having to search for it or ask for it and then type it all in manually, it's all coming through automatically for you. Users do have the ability to expand on the scope of the integration by taking advantage of any of the available API routes that are available from Tailwind, and that RMIS can then use as well. So you ask, how does it all work? Well, you can now ask carriers you want to onboard to complete the registration that Bill went through in the video process there through their RMIS onboarding portal. What then happens afterwards is every 15 minutes, RMIS will perform a check to see if there are any new carriers that have been created and whether they exist inside of your Tailwind database. If it's a new carrier, what happens is it'll then go in and create the new corresponding vendor record in the Tailwind database. And if that carrier record does already exist, what will happen is it'll simply go in and update the existing carrier and or contact records with whatever new information RMIS may have for them. As part of the onboarding process itself, what will happen is you'll provide a list of your carriers to RMIS that you want to track on to start with, and then that'll pick up any of those so that you can track the compliance of those, and then as the onboarding process picks up, any new stuff will get created automatically. So the next question is how do you get started? So with that, well, it's pretty easy from our side of things. What you simply will need to do is go in and generate an API token and provide this to your account rep over at RMIS. This can be done by going into the configuration area within Tailwind, navigating to integration and third party. From here, you simply can fill in RMIS as the name and click create, and this will then generate that authentication token that you'll email over to them. And basically what happens then is that says, yep, I allow RMIS to connect to Tailwind, and the integration then just simply flows through. And with that, that's pretty much it from our side of things. And I'll turn it back over to Brad.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, pretty simple on the Tailwind side. So thank you for covering that off. So we covered a lot of information in a quick time frame today. To quickly recap some of the most important takeaways, the Tailwind integration with RMIS will allow you to onboard carrier partners quickly and easily. It'll mitigate carrier compliance risks and ultimately optimize your workflows and free you up for revenue generating activities. Now, before we get into your questions, I have one last poll for those who want to start taking advantage of this or even just learn more about how these benefits can be applied in their specific business. So what are the next steps you'd like to take? Would you like to set up a free trial of Tailwind? Maybe get a tour of the TMS? Like to see just, yeah. Would you like to see RMIS in action? Or maybe you'd like to discuss how using Tailwind and RMS can help in your business. I give people a few more seconds here to respond. All right. I'll just close that out now. And we can start getting into our questions now. All right. So somebody's asked, where does RMIS get the carrier compliance data from? Bill, I'll turn that one over to you. Oh, you're still muted, Bill. Oh, there we go. We're good.
A lot of sources. Some are obviously from the carrier. Some of the personally, identifying information, addresses, names, those sorts of equipments and so forth. But specifically to compliance, we primarily like to rely on empirical type sources. DOT.gov, PHMSA, Hazmat, California CARB. I talked about the insurance providers getting it directly from them. We aggregate this data and we lean on kind of best-in-class sources to obtain it. Now, some things you have to have the carrier upload. That's just the way it goes. And we put some kind of follow-up processes on those things, meaning you may need some internal input that you actually put eyes on it. One of your team members put eyes on the upload and verified it. But where we can get some, empirical use of databases, .gov, .irs, etc. Those are the sources we go to. And then the big one, insurance, straight to the agents and so forth.
And somebody else is asking, how much work is required by the carriers I want to bring on? I think you alluded to that a little bit, so I'll let you elaborate more.
Yep, you got it, and it's fully defined by you. I'll give you the norm, which is, I was just doing some math off screen. While we've had this webinar, we've onboarded getting close to 700 carriers while we've been talking here. The average time for that bulk of those carriers is about 10 minutes. That little that little video loop that I showed you, that's a very generic setup, but robust, meaning it's almost universal. I've got a carrier agreement, I've got a tax document, I've got profile, I've got insurance, I've got pay to. Those are universal, and a lot of times that's all we need. We're not a super, top 20 with all these other things going on. Those are extremely fast. I always say to those people, and they're our most popular selling product, to be fair. I always say to people, wow, you're in the best place. It's the cheapest, and you get the biggest benefit of all of the data and the automation. Those guys are going to take 10 minutes. They're going to take, 9.5 minutes. I've seen as low as 3.5 minutes because that particular carrier may be signed up for with us 100 different times already. They're really familiar with it. Here's where it gets real good. And again, this is dependent on what you ask us to do. What are you tasking your carrier to do? They're directly tied together. How long will it take? But generically, about 10 minutes. And from there to how long before we can represent to you that this carrier passes all of your rule sets or not, and what are the nots, if that's true, is extremely fast as well. I mentioned 99%. 99% of the time, we're going to be able to pass that secondary qualifying information to you in less than 10 more seconds. So the whole process is extremely fast.
Look, one of our Canadian brokers here is asking, does this work for carriers that are just hauling in Canada?
It does. We work with a number of the kind of top brokers in Canada as well. We currently have pushing up against 20,000 Canadian domiciled carriers only. Some of them operate cross-border, but they're domiciled in Canada. And yes, now this falls into that category of we now rely on the carrier to do a couple more things that we don't like, but it's a dynamic of the way the world is set up. Provincial authorities need to now be secured on the workers' comp side from a carrier. We don't like that. As you know, there's no kind of a national identifier, an MC equivalent in Canada. So there's some other things that aren't necessarily as secure as we would like, but the system fully functional. And like I mentioned, there's about 20,000 Canadian domiciled carriers. They're at least self-reporting that they operate in Canada.
And somebody's asking about costs. How much does Tailwind cost? How much does RMIS cost? Kyle, maybe you can start this one off, and if you haven't had a chance to chat yet.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so from our side of things, Tailwind is available in 3 different tiers. Pro, which is $99 per month per user, Enterprise, which is $149 per month per user, and then our Unlimited tier, which is $199 per month per user. That's on our annual contracts. The RMIS integration itself is available in our Unlimited tier, so the $199 per month per user.
And Bill, can you talk a little bit more about the RMIS cost?
Yep, our basic package, what we looked at today, starts at $340 per month. I say starts at our pricing model is based on usage, not users, but usage. You can imagine that the unit of work that we're doing for you is highly dependent on how many carriers did you onboard and how many carriers are we continuing to kind of monitor consistently. So starts at 340. But our usage is truly our only cost. There's no per user, there's no integration fees, there's no grandfather fees, anything like that. It's an end of month usage fee that looks back at your activity.
All right, and you mentioned time saving claims on the part of the broker. Do you have any kind of numbers to support any of those time savings claims?
Just the information that I mentioned. About carrier setup times. The tool itself has I was talking about reports in there. The tool itself has a way you can look at your carrier setup times. You can look at the whole setup. You can look at it carrier by carrier. You can actually look at it page by page. How long were they on my agreement page? How long were they on this page? It's kind of interesting. We kind of track these metrics internally. The amount of time, this should have been one of our poll questions. How long do you think carriers spend reviewing your agreement before they sign it and go on? 27 seconds is the answer, which is probably shocking, but big time efficiencies. I mean, we hear it time and time and time again. My favorite quote is from a top 5 in the US. I won't use their name, but they got back to us nicely after their first month of service with us or operations with us. And their quote was, "We had no idea how much of a bottleneck we were to ourselves. We onboarded in excess of 1,000 more carriers in our first month with you than we ever have in our history."
Oh, so that's a big number. So thanks. Looks like that's all the questions we have right now. So I guess we'll start wrapping things up. Should you do have additional questions afterwards, you can reach us at info@tailwindtms.com, sales@rmis.com as well. And with that, Kyle, Bill, and I would like to thank you once again for joining us, and we wish you all the best during this holiday season. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.